Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of The Sandman. A nice series premiere, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously we get our introduction. Obviously I love that monologue of the waking world, or as people like to call it, the real world, because they think like almost like your... And I think it's almost, there's an interesting parallel there, just like how humans think their world is kind of the center of everything. You know, at one point in time, humans thought the Earth was the center of the universe, right? So it's almost befitting that it's just like, right, people don't think too much of dreams, but obviously dreams have so much sway over so much of all that is humans and everything that they are. Initially, we start with Dream leaving his realm to bring back one particular nightmare, the Corinthian, who escaped. And for him, it's like, but this is what you made me for. In this world, we are so much more powerful. It seems like dreams and nightmares, but it also seems like specifically dreams aren't as strong, which I'm wondering why is that? That, I guess, part of me wonders, is it because of just, you know, almost like this negativity of just the world fuels nightmares more than it, I mean, maybe that's some of that human nature fuels nightmares more than it would dreams. So obviously nightmares are stronger there, and even Lucian was like, right, my lord, you're going there, you're not going to be like as powerful, like that place is going to be draining on you. Sadly, he was in the process of bringing the Corinthian back, but ended up getting summoned by the cult. And I thought they purpose, you know, having no context of, I've never read the comic/graphic novel series, but I knew going into this that he was captured by a cult, but I wasn't sure what their purpose was. I thought like, oh, they wanted his power. To some extent, yes, but this is actually really sad because there's a tragedy behind what motivated all of this. The Magus simply wanted his son back. His son died, and he turned to sorcery. He turned to magic to be the means to bring his son back. His plan was to capture Death, to get Death to bend to his will and bring his son back to him. But it's like, right, got the Lord of Dreams instead. Which at first he didn't think much of. It's like, dreams, how powerful are dreams? But the Corinthians showed up like, oh, I know all that you're doing. I need you to keep him locked up. Because the fact is, if he ever gets free, it's going to be bad for both of us. And, you know, I was like, well, what's your connection to him? He's like, well, let's just say I owe everything I am to him. So he's enjoying his own freedom, so he gave the Magus all the groundwork necessary. It's like, right, build a glass sphere around him to keep him in, which I think maybe that's the parallel they're trying to make. Just like you keep sand in an hourglass, maybe that's kind of what was happening here. There's a seal, but if the seal's ever broken, this Dream could escape. And obviously, Dream has 3 items with him. His mask, which we don't know what that fully does. The ruby and his sand were all taken from, stripped of him, and he was in this powerless state. I'm wondering in that state, would he be no different than a human? Would he be technically weaker than a human? Like, I mean, he's captured and sealed away. Like, probably if he had his items with him, he'd probably have the strength to break free of that seal, but having them stripped away from him, all ties to his realm stripped from him, because these weapons, I guess all 3, the sand is a manifestation of, you know, it's, I think, literal sand from his realm, that it's like, it gives him sway over everything in his world. Once again, this is just my guesstimation. I know nothing about the overarching story and all the intricacies of how Dream, as well as the other Endless work. What was it? Desire, Destiny, Despair, Death, and Dream. But nevertheless, it is this situation that he was held captive for so long and refused to speak to the Magus, because the Magus is like, well, if you can't give me my son, maybe you can give me immortality, youth, so on and so forth. It did seem like eventually you completely strayed away from what you originally wanted. To be fair, Dream's not death, so he could never bring you your son back, but at the very least, he give you other stuff that could potentially compensate. So it just seems so interesting to me that it feels like you lost sight of what you originally wanted. but at the same time, it's like maybe, you didn't trust that if he ever got out, he wouldn't just slaughter all of you. And, maybe the argument could be that Dream was so stubborn he never did speak. But it's like, I guess for him, it's almost like, why would you give in to your captors? Why give them the satisfaction of, if you spoke, you'd be admitting defeat to them? So maybe that's supposed to be some stubbornness on Dream's part. Dream being like, I've been to no human. I've been to no one's will. I'm one of the endless. I'm this powerful entity. Why would I ever speak to you? So he remains silent. A decade goes by, and obviously there are repercussions when you capture the literal Lord of Dreams, that there are people who went to sleep and never woke up. Then eventually that spread to people not being able to go to sleep at all. People spent all that time waking and others stuck in an eternal sleep because his capture basically threw the world off of balance, that each one of the endless plays their role in the grand scheme of things. There is this line kind of jumping ahead at the end of the episode where it was, right, your subjects were worried that you weren't the first of the endless to leave. And I'm curious, is that about Death specifically? Did she walk away? Just because of the context, just a little context we have in the of her story in the trailer, that I was wondering, like, right, did she actually walk away from her job for a certain period of time? I mean, like, out of anyone, it would make sense that you would. But it's almost this interesting parallel in that regard as well. Just because, I mean, obviously Lucifer comes from, like, this series, eventually spinning off into his own series, but it's fascinating to know, like, that parallel. Just like, oh, Lucifer got bored of living in hell and just decided to move to Earth, specifically Los Angeles, and it's just an interesting parallel of like, oh, whereas Dream was forced, I mean, granted, left on his own volition to capture one of his nightmares and bring it back, but was gone for eventually a century, whereas Lucifer chose to abstain from, like, the throne and abscond, I guess would be the right word, his throne, her throne in this particular case, but obviously we haven't gotten to that part of her story in this series yet, but still. He did use the trinkets, the ruby at the very least, to bring himself good fortune, and it's like, right, while he's bringing himself such good fortune, it isn't just allocated to London. This spread across the world, that what was it, sleepy sickness? It, like, affected millions of people around the world, around small towns, villages, just all around. But maybe the argument, the Magus was so caught up in what he wanted and how he prospered that, because we don't even know of the doctor that came to visit. The doctor's the one that gave him the grimoire in the first place, because they were both united by their grief. But the doctor, I don't know if the doctor just eventually lived his life. I mean, we never really saw him come back, I guess, because he could never get what he wanted, so it kind of proved nothing to him. It's like, right, maybe it was a one-shot deal. I guess there's no, like, oh, trying to capture death now. The spell was like a one and done. You could never do it again. Because even one of the ingredients ended up being, like, the feather of an angel. And I'm like, I'm assuming that means, like, a legitimate feather of an angel. But either way, all that time, and obviously Alex was allocated to, he's not even seen as, like, this prestigious person. Like, he's the Magus' son, but most people didn't recognize him because he was allocated to just being the help. Because, yes, he would never stack up to his, in his father's eyes as his brother Randall. His brother Randall was the most important one, and he never amounted to much in his father's eye. And he did, from a very young age, pity Dream, and he's like, right, if you just spoke to my dad, if you gave him some gifts or something, I'm sure, like, I could get you free. But his father was like, oh, you were going to let him out? If you let him out, he'll kill all of us. Did you even think of, like, what did he say to you? And his father getting paranoid, like, oh, did he get inside your head? Because the Corinthian made sure, like, hey, before I go, I should also tell you, guards should be watching him all the time. Also, make sure no one falls asleep in front of him, because if they do, I guess, like, his reach, like, he has to probably, like, peer, like, you have to be in close enough proximity because he is limited in what he can do. But if you're in close enough proximity, he can, as a Lord of Dreams, sand or no sand, he's able to enter your dreams. But I was about to say, I guess, like, as long as you're not, I guess there's, like, a field of limitations of how he can get into your dreams, because I'm like, right, I guess everyone else in the house can sleep as long as you're not in that close enough proximity as the guards. So they would take pills to stay awake, just not to fall asleep around him. And obviously there's the whole was it Jessamy, his raven, who quite devious, finding its way in, and because for the past 10 years Roderick had been trying to kill it but was unsuccessful. Jessamy ended up starting a fire, sneaking in to find its lord, and none other than Alex is the one that ended up killing it. And obviously that really pissed Dream off. It's like, right, you claimed to have been by my side, you said that you're going to let me go, but not only did you not let me go, you ended up killing, I don't even know his friend, but I don't even know if he would even allocate Jessamy as like a familiar, like a witch's familiar. I don't know if he'd even, if that's kind of what that kind of is. But it's just a sad situation of like, right, him being under his father's thumb. And then there's the whole Ethel thing. I guess she wanted something as well. She was hoping probably for a better life. We don't know her circumstances, but she got pregnant by Roderick. He wanted her to get rid of the baby because I guess it's like no child would ever stack up to... Well, because I guess like Ethel wasn't like... Whatever the case may be, I guess she wasn't what he wanted her to be. And that child, it would never stack up, just like Alex wouldn't. It's like, right, he's not going to bring another child in this world. He just wants the child he lost back into this world. So Ethel ended up leaving, stealing the mask, the sand, and the ruby, along with, like, what was it, 200,000, so she ended up having the baby. Then there was the whole situation with Alex accidentally killing his father, and his father being like, oh, you're never going to get out of here. And now it's like that moment of truth where Alex is like, you can let me out, but he chooses not to because he was scared. He's like, how do I know that you won't just kill all of us? So he's like, I need you to promise me. Well, first he's like, I need to think about it. And it's like, for Dream, it irritates him even more because it's like, right, you're the one up here claiming that it was your father that was holding me, keeping me captured, and now you have the chance. You have the opportunity to keep those promises that you were going to let me go, but your fear got the best of you, and you wouldn't, you wanted to believe me, you wanted to let me go because you know it was the right thing to do, but you still kept me captive. He came with Paul, who there was something there. Seemed like there was kind of a spark from before as well, but he came with Paul, and it's like, right, tells Paul about all of this, and it's like, Paul kept telling Alex, just make him trust you, do what you need to. And even Dream saying, like, should I have given him a second chance? Should I have forgiven him having killed my friend, my Raven? Maybe. But once again, he was just too, understandably so. At that point, you'd already been captured for a decade. They'd killed your friend. He promised to let you go, and now when he had the opportunity to, he didn't. It's just like, no, I hate you. I hate you. And it's like, he refused to, like, let go. And I think that kind of, once again, plays into, you might be this higher being. You might be the endless, but these celestial beings are just, as we see with, and I love being able to bring in stuff from Lucifer to kind of apply to this, too, that I think that they're not beyond petty things as humans. Like, they have their insecurities. They have they get angry, and his stubbornness, like, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like it is this, I am more, like, I'm not going to bow and bend a knee to a human. I won't do that. And just decades later, just time, like he just, Alex would come visit him over and over and over again, and he just would not budge until Paul's the one that finally let him go. Messed up the mark and didn't say anything about the seal. And in that moment, one of the guards goes and he's like, oh, Dracula. So it's like, oh, why you call him a Dracula? Like, well, what else you think he could be? He's like, I don't know. I don't really think about it too much. But the guy's dreaming, and then Dream is able to get inside of him. And I guess, like, all dreams relate to the sand, because he's like, oh, I'm on a beach. And in that moment, Dream was able to grab sand from it. And I guess it's like, with a dream nearby, it brings him back into the dreaming. Like the dreams, I guess in general, like when you doze off, your dreams and everything kind of bring you into the realm of the dreaming. And it was just beach sand, sure, but it was all like he probably could have pulled anything. Once again, I'm thinking too much, but I'm curious, like, would dream be able to take anything from a dream and turn it into sand, or did it need to specifically be a dream involving sand? I mean, I guess it just happenstance to be the guy's dreaming about being on a beach. But I guess, like, the dream fades away, and in that moment, he's able to pick up the sand from the dreaming. And obviously, the guard attacks him, breaking the spear holding him. And in his hand, he holds dream. Like, he was able to kind of bring sand from the dreaming into in the waking world, and put both of them asleep, and ended up escaping. And I love a lot of the transitions that they have camera work wise. Like Alex is older, and he's walking through and he looks through the mirror and he sees a reflection of his younger self, and they transition over to him walking in the hall as a younger man, and then dreams there in front of him. It's like, you don't even know what, not only did you hold me captive for so long, but you have no idea what you've done to this realm, like, by holding me captive. He's like, I had no idea. It's like, they probably would have known, Alex would have probably been more aware of the consequences, but you refuse to talk to him. So I don't think it's just on the humans. Yes, it's their fault for doing it, but I think there's also an element of your own stubbornness that kind of allowed things to persist as long as they did, because talking down to them was kind of beneath you to some extent. And maybe I'm adding too much hoity-toityness to him. Maybe that's not even where that's coming from. Maybe it exactly is where it's coming from. But he's like, fine, I will give you a gift of eternal sleep as your punishment for what you've done. So, and I'm curious, like, it is eternal sleep. I don't think it's like death. It is like, I am just putting you in a dreamlike state forever. And and I love, like, in that moment, like, Alex kept getting younger and younger. It's like, right, there was the teenage-ish Alex, and then it was back to the kid Alex being put to sleep. So I'm wondering, is it almost kind of like a you don't age type of situation, like his body's forever stuck in that state, and it's a form of immortality. It's like, right, your father wanted immortality, now you have it. Because before he's like, I could have asked for everything my father want, and now I think that's the irony, where it's like, right, you wanted to be free of me, well, fine, you're finally free of me. Maybe not, because him being in eternal sleep means that you will always be maybe trapped in his realm. So it's like, now I've trapped you just like you trapped me for all these years. Your father wanted immortality, and now I'm going to use it as your punishment. Returning home just to find his realm in shambles, because his subjects, some left to go look for him, others believe he abandoned them, and he was like, do my subjects not know me? Have I not proven myself that they would think that I would leave them? Because he is the dream, and the dreaming is him. It crumbled and decayed in his absence. And now his dreams and nightmares are out there in the world. You know, each also, like, kind of like the Corinthian. It's like, you made me for a specific purpose. It's what I was made for. Like, now I'm not just there to haunt the nightmares of humans. Now we have the power to have even more control of them. Is kind of what the Corinthian wants. And it's like, he's finally out of his cage, and he's not going to stop until everyone in the world is just like him. So his thing is cutting people's eyes out, and you're like, Jesus, that's brutal. Because I guess it's like, he is a nightmare, and it's like, right, it's his instinct. It's all that I was made for, you know? And I wonder, is he a specific nightmare, or is he just a manifestation, just any nightmare? Like, is it a thing that dream did make him, but was he a dream? Was he a nightmare born from someone else? Or that's the thing of, like, when you dream of something, is it the Sandman, like, dream, like, crafting it for you in your dreams and your nightmares? He crafts each thing for someone. So it's the Corinthian, a specific nightmare to someone's specific nightmare that dream created, or is it just kind of an ethereal, just kind of like you're just a general nightmare? I don't know. I'm overthinking it, but it's just something I'm just think it's just kind of interesting. Maybe they'll get into the nitty gritty of those details. Maybe they won't. Either way, There's also obviously set up with the storyline with Ethel and her son Johnny. It's like, right, no Sandman to bring us dreams, so it's up to us to live our own dreams and see how that all turned out. So kind of a nice start. I definitely could tell from this first episode. I had a feeling just from like the way people talk about this comic. Like, once again, a lot of people say nothing but good things about it, but also a lot of people are like, it's just kind of a hard thing to kind of get into, and because it's also not some people's cup of tea. So I immediately was like, oh, this is probably going to end up being like Legion. I hope. Well, Legion, which I love that show. That's a show not for everybody, and I hope more people do watch this show. But I can definitely tell, because I think it might just be a Neil Gaiman style in general, that a lot of his stuff are probably slow burns. I've never read a lot of his material. I've watched stuff that he's that are adaptations of his work / things that he's been a part of, like Good Omens, American Gods. I think the movie Stardust from, like, what was that, 2007, are examples. Obviously Lucifer, but obviously that became its own thing. But this definitely feels like a slow burn of a show. And also an interesting thing I didn't know was, it seems like this is almost like an anthology in some regards, that Dream is the only recurring character. He's the only connective tissue. Well, not he's the only recurring character, but he's the only connective tissue between every storyline. And now I'm curious, like, is he going to be like the background to so many stories, which I think is interesting storytelling. Like, I've always liked that thought of like a storytelling thing where it's just like, right, there's all these plot threads, but they're not directly, they are connected, but there's only going to be one connecting thread, and it's all in its Dream. He's kind of like, he's at the forefront of this episode, but he's also a background character to this episode. Like, everyone else kind of steps to the forefront. He's just kind of like the set piece to some extent. So I'm curious, is that the role he's going to have over the course of the series? I mean, is that the role he kind of plays in the comics? Like, yes, he's the main character, but the story is told through his eyes and his perspective, but everyone else kind of takes front stage while he kind of watches and plays a role connecting all the story. I don't know. I'm not phrasing it correctly, but it seemed like such an interesting thing. I mean, it just straight up was like just it seemed like a period piece with fantastical elements. That is like, right, this would be an interesting story all on its own to some extent in a period piece wise, but then you also sprinkle in the Sandman related stuff of the universe. But like I said, I feel like this is going to be a slow burn of a show. To be fair, it's only the first episode. So in the grand scheme of things could easily change in the future. So, but I'm very, very excited to continue, because I wasn't quite sure what this show was going to be. But obviously, like I said, the trailer had me super excited. The date announcement video alone had me excited. So I'm very interested to see where all of this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.